Good morning, moderator. Good morning, moderator. This is the Mandarin interpreter, Catherine. Could you please assign me? Good morning, moderator. Can you hear me? Good morning, moderator. Can you hear me?
Yes, Catherine, we are assigned.
Okay, thank you. Yes. Yes, because
My voice is very low. How about now? Yeah, morning. How are you? Sure. Okay. Yeah, sure. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Hello. Yeah, we can hear you. Yeah, we can hear Rebecca. Yeah, Catherine, we can hear you. Thank you.
us on Zoom, our event would be slightly... Good morning, good morning. Good morning all. Especially for friends coming on Zoom, just to let you know that our event is slightly delayed for 5 to 10 minutes, so we will come back to you again. Thank you. our guests and friends, welcome to the AIRI Regional Forum, Bridging Knowledge and Action, the roles of the universities in rural revitalization. I'm Tai from Center for the Civil Society and Governance, and I'm your MC for today. We are very honored to greet you both face-to-face here and on Zoom as well. The turnout tells us the importance of the issues of rural revitalization. In today's world, the rural communities of many developed and developing countries are facing pressing challenges, such as depopulation and environmental deterioration. Today's forum calls upon academics and renowned practitioners from mainland China, Taiwan, Japan, Thailand, and Hong Kong SAR to share our experiences and insights on how universities can play critical roles in rural revitalization by integrating both the knowledge and resources from different fields to promote urban-rural partnership, as well as incubating local change makers and talents. Let me introduce our guests of honors for the event today. We have Professor Ming, Dean of Social Sciences, the University of Hong Kong. Professor Wai-Fong Lam, Director for the Center of Civil Society and Governance, also Head of Department of Politics and Public Administrations, HKU. Professor Stephen Tang, Head of Countryside Conservation Office, Hong Kong SAR Government. Ms. Bonnie Yip, Senior Corporate Sustainability Manager, HSBC. Also with us today are the faculty members, fellows, and staff members coming from Tsinghua University, National Chengchi University, Asian Institute of Technology, as well as our very own HKU team. Welcome all for coming. To kickstart the event, may I invite Professor Ming Wen, Dean of Social Sciences, to give us a welcoming remark. Professor Wen, please.
Hello, is it working? Okay, great. Hello, everybody. So again, I'm Ming Wen. I'm the Dean of Social Sciences at Hong Kong U. I actually joined Hong Kong U last October, and I had lived in Utah and worked at the University of Utah for nearly 20 years before moving to Hong Kong. And part of the reason of my move is to be able to attend an exciting event like today. So it's my great pleasure to give the opening remark today for this very exciting and very important event. So Professor Stephen Tang, Professor Danny Lam, keynote speakers, and the professors from Tsinghua University, Chengchi University, Asian Institute of Technology, and ladies and gentlemen, good morning and a very warm welcome to Hong Kong and to this regional forum. Rural areas are often overlooked in the mainstream of urban development. Many of the rural communities in the region and in the world struggle with poverty, unemployment, biodiversity degradation, cultural and heritage loss, and just generally a lack of resources. Yet, rural areas house most of the sustainability capitals that are essential for combating today's many grand challenges, such as climate change, food insecurity, and many other human and economic development issues facing today's world. The team at the Center for Civil Society and Governance has worked out a sustainable revitalization model based on a collaborative and community-based approach. The model is evidence-based and piloted for 9 years at the Lai Chi Wo and the neighboring villages in Hong Kong. This project has been applauded with some local, national, and international awards, including a major recognition in 2020 from the UNESCO, namely United Nations Education, Scientific, and Cultural Organization. The model has now become a best practice example for Hong Kong, mainland China, and beyond. This is no easy task. The revitalization must respect and inherit the cultural, ecological, value, and social capital of villages, while blending in the innovation and entrepreneurship, and reconnects the villages with the wider society. A sincere thank you to the Hongkong Bank Foundation for your generous support to make this project even possible to begin with, partnering with us on this good cause and provide us with the resources to scale up our impact in the Asian Pacific region. This regional forum is part of the Asia Pacific Initiative for Regional Impact Program, led by Hongkong U and jointly organized with Tsinghua University, Chengchi University, and the Asian Institute of Technology. This is a regional consortium of intermediaries with the aims to incubate both shared knowledge in the work of rural revitalization, as well as a talent pool as the change-making agents. I know the program has trained over 34 fellows and 50 associate fellows from the Asia Pacific region. I also understand that this forum alone has attracted more than 200 participants, joining us from Thailand, Myanmar, Japan, mainland China, Taiwan, Macau, and of course, local Hong Kong. And they come from diverse backgrounds, including government, business, profit, nonprofit. Many of the participants are policy entrepreneurs and policymakers in their respective domains. This tells us how important and interdisciplinary the subject matter is. And the quest for a more sustainable model for rural revitalization is widely shared by many in the region. The 4 universities also bring in their respective local and international partners, making this an impactful network of networks. I must congratulate the center as well as the 3 partnering universities on the wonderful research and knowledge exchange impact you all will have attained. Many local and international partners and collaborators must also be credited for this wonderful event and cause as well. I would also like to commend the fellows and associate fellows for your commitment and effort in the past year, attending master lectures and practical workshops, conducting site visits, working very hard on your case studies and projects. I look forward to seeing your ideas turning into real-world actions in the very near future in many different places in the region. And with that, may I wish you all an engaging morning filled with rich discussions and fruits for thoughts. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Professor Wen, for your speech. Please return to your seat. Now, may I invite Professor Stephen Tang, Head of Countryside Conservation Office, Hong Kong SAR Government, to officiate the event with a speech. Thank you.
Distinguished guests and speakers, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It's my great pleasure to greet you all here in today's AIRI Regional Forum, organized by the Center for Civil Society and Governance of the University of Hong Kong. Our Chinese culture has long placed a strong emphasis on harmonious coexistence of human and nature. And in our country's strategic plan for rural revitalization rolled out in 2018, it has outlined key tasks towards the overall goal of building rural areas with thriving business, pleasant living environment, social etiquette and civility, effective governance and prosperity. In Hong Kong, we adopt multi-pronged measures to conserve and protect our environment. Established in 2018, our office, the Countryside Conservation Office, takes forward countryside conservation at different levels, echoing with our country's vision and international trend of rural revitalization. The theme of today's forum, Bridging Knowledge and Action, the roles of university in rural revitalization, it particularly appeals to me. It concurs with our office AAA approach, that's assess, act, and advocate. In addition to accumulating and transmitting knowledge, from the academic perspective, universities play a key role as a cradle for nurturing future leaders in countryside conservation and environmental protection. Collaboration with stakeholders, including community and local villagers, is a key to success in countryside conservation. We are glad that the Center for Civil Society and Governance is one of our valuable partners in carrying out village revitalization projects in Lai Chi Wo and now extending to the nearby village, Mujilam. This year, our office is celebrating the 5th anniversary. Our office never stopped exploring different conservation strategies for our remote countryside, especially for important sites like Lai Chi Wo and Charlottetown. As of today, our office has sponsored over 40 projects through the Countryside Conservation Funding Scheme for conserving natural environment, ecological habitats, long-graded built heritage, and cultural and historic treasures. In addition to the funding scheme, our office also carries out minor improvement works to enhance the environment of remote countryside, including repairing footpaths, building village sewer, and pursuing environmentally friendly construction projects. For construction projects, I think people sometimes have psychological hurdle visiting the beautiful countryside simply because of the lack of resource, basic facilities like toilets. We have initiated to provide new experience in public toilets in the countryside, and at the same time demonstrate how zero carbon can be achieved in their operation. Worth a note is that we have achieved through our eco-smart public toilet in Lai Chi Wo, which is being built and will be completed very soon. It has achieved advancing net zero standard as defined by the World Green Building Council. That means 40% reduction in the construction and 100% carbon offset during its operation. It will become Hong Kong's first ever advancing net zero building. And when we go to the countryside, taking a long journey from the city, it's natural for us to expect somewhere to sit, to have a cup of tea, eat something, or even stay overnight for some immersive experience in the environment. However, in our countryside, most of the village houses cannot achieve the licensing requirements for guest house or food business, such as the requirement of fire sprinklers, which is quite common in the city, for example, a hotel. But in our countryside, the small houses cannot accommodate such requirements. And through our work and coordination with different government departments, authorities, we have achieved to relax some requirements and procedures without compromising the basic safety and hygiene standards. And we're glad to report that we have successfully facilitated Hong Kong Countryside Foundation in obtaining guest house licenses for all their 11 village houses in Lai Chi Wo just a few months ago. To make further licensing process easy, certain, or saving, we are currently working with different departments and precipitating the thoughts and practices into a simple licensing guide, hopefully for use by laymen. And by this, we hope that more houses, village houses, can achieve the licensing requirements, and there will be more licensed guest house and food business in our countryside, so as to support what we are promoting, ecotourism and economic sustainability in the countryside. We hope the ongoing and planned measures will not only conserve our precious natural and cultural resources, bringing new life to the desolate, remote countryside, but also promote sustainable economic activities such as ecotourism and associated cultural activities, thereby responding to the community's aspiration for urban-rural symbiosis. For sure, Center for Civil Society and Governance of Hong Kong U will be one of our important partners along the road ahead. I wish you all have a fruitful knowledge exchange event today. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Tang. Please remain on the stage. May I also use this opportunity to invite our guests of honors to go onto the stage for a picture together. Professor Wang, Professor Lam, Dr. Kang, Professor Zhang, Professor Uno, Professor Wang, Professor Tang, Professor Ahmed, and Professor Ling, Ms. Yip, and Dr. Lo, please onto the stage. Thank you. Thank you all. Please return to your seat. The next session of the forum will be led by three of our distinguished speakers. Today, they will share with us their thoughts on topics surrounding on what roles can the universities play in rural revitalization. The three sessions will be held in the format of key dialogues. Our speakers will share their thoughts on specific topics and followed by a dialogue moderated by a faculty member of our partnering university. I would like to also mention that today's event will be recorded for future knowledge exchange purposes. So if you have any concern about this, please talk to our staff member. Our first speaker is Dr. Peter King. Dr. King is professionally trained as an environmental scientist specializing in agricultural economics, environmental planning and policy. He was an Asian Development Bank's leading natural resources management expert for 15 years. Dr. King is currently the Senior Policy Advisor of the Bangkok Regional Center of Institute for Global Environment Strategies, which is a member of the Climate Change Asia Coordination Group, and a team leader of the Adaptation Project Preparation and Finance on the USA Adaptation Asia Pacific Project. He will share with us today his wisdom on rural development and climate change. Dr. King, please.
Good morning, everyone. Now, before I start, I would like to ask you, how many of you actually live on a farm? Put your hand up. 1, 2. How many of you had a parent who lived on a farm? Ah, many more. How many of you had a grandparent who lived on a farm? Yes, nearly everyone. There, in a nutshell, is the issue that we're here to talk about today. That has been something which has taken a transition which has taken place really in the last 2 generations. And it's something we need to think about. How do we reverse that trend, or we will have nobody living in the countryside and you'll all be living in these huge high-rise buildings like Hong Kong. So agriculture is both a source and a victim of climate change. The AR6 report, which was released earlier this year, shows that about 79% of global greenhouse gas emissions come from energy, industry, transport, and buildings, but about 22% comes from agriculture, forestry, and other land uses. Direct emission reductions are possible in the agriculture, forestry, and land use sector through things like biomass sequestration, soil carbon, landscape rehabilitation, livestock reduction, fire prevention, and indirect reductions through wind and solar power on farmlands, solar panels on dams and irrigation canals, and electrification of farm machinery. And at the same time, agriculture will have to adapt to the impacts of climate change. And adaptation measures are possible through things like cultivar improvements, on-farm water management and storage, soil moisture conservation, irrigation, agroforestry, community-based adaptation, farm and landscape level diversification in agriculture, sustainable land management, and use of agroecological principles and practices, and ecosystem-based adaptation. So there are many things that can be done. But in reality, agriculture is also facing huge losses due to climate-related disasters. And while it's very difficult to attribute any single disaster to climate change, there's clearly a climate change impact in many of the recent agricultural losses throughout the Asia-Pacific region. Most of you will have seen on the news the floods in Pakistan, which affected nearly a third of the country. The flood damage estimates there were over $14 billion, and total economic losses about $15 billion, with rehabilitation and reconstruction costs at least $16 billion. And of course, this was not the first time in Pakistan. They also had disastrous floods in 2010 and 2011, causing about $7 billion in damages. And those of you who were in Thailand in 2011, as I was, massive floods affecting Bangkok with about $1.9 billion in damages, and massive damages to the agricultural areas on the outskirts of Bangkok. Typhoon Haiyan in the Philippines in 2013, about $1.4 billion. And one could go on and on and on to demonstrate that agriculture and rural communities face huge economic losses, as well as loss of life and livelihoods from climate change, which is projected to become increasingly worse over the next few decades. And climate change really exacerbates other rural changes. So we know that rural areas throughout Asia and the Pacific share many of the following issues in common, which are exacerbated by climate change. Increasing poverty in rural areas, as the costs of living and farm inputs have often outstripped the financial returns from farming. In fact, I grew up on a farm and my father went bankrupt from farming. So I know all about poverty and farming from personal experience. And food insecurity. There's nearly 1.1 billion people lacking healthy diets due to poverty and high food prices, which have soared to record highs in the last couple of years. Farm household indebtedness, the average indebtedness of farms in Thailand is really enormous, multiple times their ability to ever pay back the debts. And often that is at the risk of losing properties. They have borrowed money from informal money lenders as well as the banks, and they run the risk of actually losing their land when those loans are called in. And of course, the rural to urban migration, which continues, especially of you young people, all looking for the bright lights in the city, and landless people throughout the region as well. And then, of course, the increasing age of farmers. Many of the farmers are now over 60 years of age, and there are declining numbers of farm workers. Countries are having to think about bringing in seasonal workers from other to carry out the necessary farm work. So, is rural revitalisation a solution to climate change? Well, in my view, it's a partial solution. For example, it is possible to share solar and wind generation facilities with ongoing farm operations and actually allow farmers to get some benefit from the kind of mitigation measures that are in place. Carbon offsets based on soil carbon sequestration, reduce greenhouse gas emissions from climate smart agriculture, and fungal carbon sequestration. About 30% of the carbon dioxide that is absorbed in rural areas actually ends up in the vast network of fungus below the trees. Carbon sequestration from agroforestry, forest hedgerows, reforesting unproductive land, and planting trees alongside roads. Farmers may also receive direct payment for ecosystem services, including climate change mitigation. When I was a young government official working for the Soil Conservation Authority, we paid farmers to take steep land out of production and reconvert it to forest. We paid them directly to do that. Weather index insurance for protection against extreme weather events. A particular role for insurance companies to provide that kind of insurance. And then waste biomass to energy power plants instead of burning the waste in the fields. So agroforestry is a really good example of contribution to both mitigation and adaptation. Forests, trees, and agroforestry resources have always been vital to the livelihoods of forest-dependent people and to the adaptation and resilience of rural communities and infrastructure. However, climate change is going to impact shade-dependent crops like coffee and cocoa. Those of you like me who like your cup of coffee in the morning should be concerned about this. Coffee is one of those commodities that may be heavily impacted by climate change. And areas suitable for production of some of these commodities are beginning to diminish in some of the key producing countries as temperatures continue to rise. And as forests and agroforests begin to dry out due to increasing temperatures, they will become more susceptible to wildfires. And those of you who've been watching the news of the fires in Canada at the moment would realize just how massive some of these wildfires can be and the contribution that they make to releasing carbon back into the atmosphere. And contributing to not only national but also transboundary air pollution, a big problem currently within the ASEAN countries through biomass burning, which is causing PM 2.5 levels to be some of the worst in the world. Chiang Mai recently has been rated as the most polluted city in the world because of burning of biomass from corn production in the northern part of Thailand. Agroforestry systems are also important for climate change adaptation in coastal areas, particularly for salinized soils, where you can actually put salt-tolerant vegetation to rehabilitate salinized areas. On steep slopes, as I said, reforesting steep slopes and other degraded landscapes. Soil carbon sequestration is something which probably doesn't occur much to people who don't actually make a living from the land, but it's very important for farmers to have good soil and to improve the quality of their soil. And so some cultivated soils around the world have lost about 1/2 to 2/3 of their original soil carbon. This is exacerbated by poor land use practices like continuing to plough lands and not put organic material back into the soil. So regenerating soil allows the fungus in the soil to sequester carbon. A study in Sweden found that 50 to 70% of carbon bound in the soil is from tree roots and their associated mycorrhizal fungi. Restorative land use not only sequesters carbon in the soil, but also has positive impacts on food security, provision of agro-industries, water quality, and the environment. Similarly, adoption of conservation tillage or no-till systems, mulching, composting, or application of biochar not only increases the soil carbon content, but also improves the soil structure and increases crop yields. And soil conservation measures such as contour farming, deep ripping of compacted soils, improved on-farm water management also combat climate change impacts, such as increased rainfall intensity. In my own country of Australia, farmers are actually being paid now for their soil protection practices to sequester carbon as part of their better land use management. In terms of livestock, and those of you who have ever tried the Impossible Burger or some other form of lab meat would know that this is an increasing trend. And those of you who have moved from eating meat to become vegetarian or vegan, as I know a lot of my young colleagues have done, there are significant lifestyle changes taking place as well. And part of what's driving that is that the methane emissions from livestock are huge. And they've often prompted calls for people to change their lifestyle from eating meat and dairy products to become vegetarian or vegan. And there's considerable private sector interest now in lab-grown substitutes for both meat and milk. And it's generated new and sometimes controversial investment. Some evidence suggests that if the energy for the lab-grown meat is still coming from coal-fired power plants, the greenhouse gas emissions may be actually greater than from livestock production. So systematic research is really needed to make sure that if we go down that path, that it is actually a sustainable path. And a lot of research is continuing on feed alternatives for livestock, such as seaweed to be added to the food stock for reducing methane emissions from cows. And I don't know how many people in the room would have pets, but I did an assessment recently on what is the contribution of pets and pet food to climate change. And you would be surprised how significant it really is. It is a huge business, and there is a significant contribution to greenhouse gas emissions from the whole pet food industry. In terms of mechanization and some of the technological advances, many parts of Asia and the Pacific have been really slow to mechanize their farm production systems, which is kind of strange given that, you know, there's an increasing need as farm labor is growing older and, you know, there are fewer and fewer workers available for farms. So parts of the developed world now have turned to robots and automated machines for previous human labor activities such as planting, weeding, and harvesting. But that's not yet widely practiced in the Asia Pacific region, but could be coming in some countries like Japan. And the region really has an opportunity now to leapfrog over the old internal combustion engine machines and move directly to electrification of farm machinery. And provided the electricity, of course, is coming from renewable sources and not from coal-fired power plants. Then we have to consider the whole issue of supply chains and responsible local consumption. The global supply chain system is a major contributor to greenhouse gas emissions through shipping, aviation, general logistics from farm to fork, as they say. And an approach to minimize the impacts of the global supply chain would be to move much more towards local consumption, often supported by things like farmer markets, labeling with food miles, or campaigns to know the producer of your food. I was saying earlier today, one of the charming things about Japan that I've noticed is that when you go to the supermarket, you'll buy your fresh vegetables with a photo of the farmer and his name on the package. So things like this to actually begin to consume locally rather than try to bring everything from other countries. An added advantage of local consumption, of course, is the reduced need for packaging. And plastics, as we know, is a major contributor to litter, as well as being derived from fossil fuels. But also we need to consider the source of energy for cooking food. In many parts of the region, people are still using biomass for cooking. Natural gas, I was reading today, often results in high levels of benzene within households, which is a cancer-forming agent. And so we need to be a little careful about suggesting that natural gas is actually a bridge energy source instead of coal and oil. And some countries are actually going as far as banning gas cookers in new buildings and saying that they're simply not allowed. In terms of rural infrastructure, as rural areas are generating much less national tax revenues than urban or industrial areas, there's often insufficient investment in rural infrastructure, such as all-weather farm-to-market roads or even access to electricity. And climate change impacts such as flood damage, coastal erosion, buckling of pavements, and inadequate drainage can have major social and economic impacts on rural areas. For example, just emergency access to hospitals. So rural infrastructure now needs to be climate-proofed. And as was noted in my introduction, I used to work for the Asian Development Bank, and we've estimated that about 10 to 15% of the capital investment is needed for climate proofing, as well as increased investment in operation and maintenance costs. So in relation to trade and border carbon adjustment, as rural areas are increasingly linked to global food and commodity trading, climate-related changes in purchasing countries can have a significant flow-on effect on your rural areas in developing countries in the region. And one significant change that's now taking place is the European Union's Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism, which is part of the EU Green Deal, which aims to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 55% by 2030. And the idea there is that it intends to equalize the price paid price of carbon paid for EU products operating under the EU emissions trading system and imported goods. And so imported goods will be much more expensive to match those in the EU because of this border carbon adjustment. And it all comes down to money eventually, doesn't it? Finance and insurance. And unfortunately, there is an inadequate climate finance being directed towards mitigation and adaptation in rural areas. Some jurisdictions that are highly vulnerable to climate change now find it almost impossible to get any form of property insurance. Places in Florida and California, for example, the insurance companies have actually decided that they won't insure for climate damages. A lot of market-based instruments such as carbon taxes or emission permits actually exclude the rural areas, except one example is the New Zealand emissions trading scheme, which does include the forest sector. And to date, there's been very little experience in paying farmers directly to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. But I think that's something that can be done in future if net zero goals are to remain on track. One relatively successful measure has been the weather index insurance schemes. Also, we need to think about genetically modified organisms. A lot of research is being done around this area. If that can be directed towards making more climate resilient crops, I think it's fine. But we need to be very, very careful about the pathways that CRISPR and other genetic modification could take us. So rather than ending on a negative note, it should be acknowledged that many countries in the region are retooling their agricultural extension systems to promote climate smart agriculture, with demonstration plots and climate field schools being used to convey to farmers the various options that they can access to adapt to climate change. And universities are particularly important in playing that key role in training the next generation of climate smart farmers, as well as conducting the necessary research. However, additional resources will need to be allocated to such services in future, so that you young people out there that are looking for a career opportunity in the rural areas will actually find it through your universities and subsequent careers. So in conclusion, rural revitalisation has much to contribute to climate change mitigation and adaptation, while simultaneously providing co-benefits such as biodiversity protection, poverty reduction, etc. Agriculture sector plans, national adaptation plans, NDCs should include a wide range of the measures outlined above as appropriate to the national context. And the private sector, are we listening, Bonnie? The private sector should be alert to the prospects of sharing land with farmers for solar and wind generation, which is a win-win, low-hanging fruit for energy system transformation. And universities, professors, should take on the research challenges posed by climate change, train the next generation in climate smart farmers, and provide agricultural extension workers with the necessary information for climate field schools and demonstration plots. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. King, for your insightful sharing. Please come over to the center of the stage. And may I also invite Professor Lai Luing, Program Chair of Development Planning Management and Innovation from Asian Institute of Technology, to have an interactive dialogue with Dr. King.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, distinguished guests, and good morning, all our fellows and participants. Dr. Kim, it's my pleasure to have an interaction with you. Your presentation and your insight sharing is very useful and interesting to all our fellows and also participants in this conference workshop. You know that I have some experience in the research mainly, and I also see that many countries in Asia Pacific already try to mainstream climate change in rural development. For example, in Vietnam, climate smart agriculture is already implemented with the pilot scale in 2014, and now they already expanded in the whole country. Climate smart agriculture and adapt to the situation in Vietnam is called climate smart agriculture technology that aiming into some kind of water saving technique in agriculture or drought water resistant crop variety. And also other countries like in Thailand also very active in the climate resilient infrastructure in the rural area. So Thai invests a lot of funding for improving the irrigation system, reservoir, and dam for agriculture. We also see Philippines, the climate finance is also that's a good example. So at the regional policy advisor, you already work with many countries in Asia Pacific region. Could you please share some of your experience of successful case, because mainstream already there, but any successful case in Asia Pacific? Maybe it's good to hear from you. Thank you.
Good, thank you very much. You know, my former employer, the Asian Development Bank, now recasts itself as the Climate Bank for Asia. They claim many successes from the different kinds of projects they're implementing. One good example is floating solar panels on reservoirs. It is actually utilizing the space that's available, so it's not taking up land areas. It actually cools the panels through evaporation, and water is then available for cleaning the panels as well. So it's a win-win situation. So there's a lot of investment going into floating solar panels. In India, they've taken that a step further, and they're putting the solar panels on the irrigation channels, which again reduces the amount of evaporation and takes up available space. So I think there's a lot of examples like that taking place now around the region, particularly in the mitigation area. I would say that there is less money going into adaptation, however.
Actually, there is some factor that also made the success of this mainstreaming climate into rural development plans or policy. So according to you, what are the most important factors that influence this kind of success?
Well, I think as a policy advisor, I would have to say that policy is really important. And getting the policies right, legislation and regulations. But I was also the head of the Asian Environmental Compliance and Enforcement Network. And I would have to say that one of the things that I've noticed around the region is that no matter how good your laws are, no matter how good your regulations are, people usually find a way around them one way or another. So compliance and enforcement is a really important factor. And then, of course, finance is the other major issue. And that we really need to boost the amount of money that's going into climate change adaptation. Mitigation is much easier because there's actually a revenue stream that comes from energy production. Much more difficult for the private sector to find a good rationale for climate change adaptation, however.
Yeah, policy is very important and investment is very important. As far as you know that many countries, developed countries like European country and under European Commission, it invests a lot of financial instruments in rural development and also mainstream climate change adaptation and mitigation into rural development plan. 40% of European funding go to the common agriculture policy, as you know, and also other financial instruments that focus on rural development, including climate change adaptation and mitigation. So this instrument is not only to propose a kind of policy in the rural area, but it's also enhance the scientific evidence for supporting climate change adaptation and mitigation model, because science technology is very important that to see the also behavior of climate change and also innovative model for adaptation and mitigation. So from your point of view, how science and policy interface could be enhanced in our Asia Pacific region in order to tackle the climate change, because we are in the very challenging situation because we are different context and the impact of climate change also very different. So what is your view on that? Thank you.
Yeah, one of the former jobs I had was as an advisor to an environment minister, I have to say that trying to convey science to a minister is pretty difficult. So communication is really, really important. I always remember him saying at one stage when I gave him a policy brief, he said, "Is that the best you can do?" And I said, "No, I spent a lot of time doing this." He said, "No, it's too long." I said, "What do you mean it's too long? It's only 2 pages." And he said, "No, can't you do it in 1 page?" So communication skills are really, really important. And I think the universities have a particular role to play in making sure that when you graduate from these illustrious halls, that you actually have the capacity to communicate to people who may not understand science. And so that's a really important thing for you to learn as you go from here. Yeah.
Yeah. My last question to you. Very difficult to approach policymaker, but also because not only the behavior of the policymaker, but also everyone play their part. Also researchers, scientists, and also practitioners. Perhaps they don't find any common point to work together. So from your view that because we have a lot of international agency like UN that operate in the Asia Pacific, and the UN is the agency that also connect between the policy and practice. So what could be also this kind of organization that enhance the connection, collaboration, stakeholder participation to connect between the science and the policy?
Well, I think, one of the difficulties with the UN organizations is that they tend to be very top-down. When we come to issues of rural revitalization and climate change adaptation in rural areas, it's really, really local. And so I think, there is a need, in fact, for those top-down organizations to start putting more effort and more money into bottom-up community-based actions, because that's really where the change will take place.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I think that also the cooperation of knowledge between the policymaker, researcher, and the community needed, and also the context based, right? So we have a lot of also policy and knowledge at the regional level, but we don't have a kind of knowledge as a local Pacific area. So the impact is in the locally. So thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Yes.
Thank you, Dr. King and Professor Leung, for the discussion. Please return to your seats. Coming up next is Professor Zheng Fengtian from Ming University. Professor Zheng, an expert on rural economy and rural revitalization, graduated from both Ming University and Macquarie University. Professor Zheng's research focuses on the three rural issues: food security and clustering of rural industry and rural innovation. Today, he will give us a speech on urban-rural integration in China. Professor Zheng, over to you.
Oh, it's an honor to be here to make a presentation. My topic is urban-rural integration in China. My name is Fengtian Zheng, come from the Ming University of China. So today's meeting topic is knowledge and action, the role, how the university can contribute to the rural revitalization. So, you know, in the China, now I want to give some my experience about how the university professor can make a contribution to the top the national strategy. One is the background. In the past 10 years, nearly 100 million people in the rural countryside got out of poverty. But in China, it is still two words. One word in the city, prosperity. In the village, we can call it the depressed countryside, some hollow village. In the countryside, we call the elderly people, children, women. So it's totally two words. We call the 城乡二元结构. Sometimes I try to speak a little bit Chinese and English. Maybe it's totally different. The income gap between urban and rural residents is still larger. 10 years ago, it's 3.3 to 1. 10 years ago. Last year, it's better, 2.5 to 0. It is still larger. The third is the infrastructure and the public service between the urban and the rural is still large. So 5 years ago, in China's TOPST meeting, a new strategy was put forward. That's called Rural Revitalization Strategy. This strategy is a grand strategy. They try to solve the urban-rural gap in the future. This strategy lasts nearly 33 years. 3 phases. First phase is 2018 to 2020. The second phase is 2021 to 2035, 15 years. Now this year is the third year. In the end of the 2035, maybe some agriculture and rural become modernization. And the last phase, from the 2036 to 2050, maybe that's the final objective. The agriculture becomes strong. The peasants become, maybe we call the common prosperity. and rural become maybe beautiful. So it's a long grand. How to make the long grand strategy to become the action. So that's it's our objective. So my topic is urban, rural, urban integration is one of these important strategy to realize the objective of rural revitalization strategy. So a package of solution was implemented to realize the strategy. In China, the National Development or Rural Committee is responsible for integration of rural and urban. We call it 国家发改委负责城乡融合战略。So how the national NDRC to make this task become action? So they invited a lot of professors, a lot of professionals to try to give a very detailed policy. So this policy we call 2 years, maybe 1.5 years later, a very important document or policy was issued. We call 中共中央、国务院关于建立城乡融合发展体制机制和政策体系的意见。This is a very, very important policy to make the grand rural revitalization strategy to be action. So I'm lucky to be invited to participate some discussion to make this document. That's very important. You know, this document it invited a lot of people to participate to make this. The decision maker want to make this policy maybe scientific. So this is the outline of this document, very, very long, maybe 7 parts. The second part is, you know, we call the 人地钱 between the city and the rural is totally different. Then human, maybe, you know, in China, nearly 300 million people moved to the city, worked there, but they have maybe partial right compared to the resident in the city. So the land is another thing. Land, the same land, but totally different right. So this document try to equalization of this land and labor and so on and so on. The second objective is some inclusive sharing of basic public service in urban and rural area. You know, in China, in city, maybe you have a better public service and infrastructure, but in the countryside, maybe it's not so good. So this document try to, maybe we call the integration or integrated development. Another is maybe the income in the countryside low. So how to make the farmer become rich? That's very important. So this is a very long document. How to make this document become action? Then 国家城乡融合发展试验区就是 6 months later, a new action plan was issued. We call this policy experiment. Why policy experiment wrong? Because China is so big, so many villages, so it's very difficult, it's complexity. So you have to get some experiment, then you can have, the policy can have better result. So this action plan was issued 6 months later. All provinces compete with this region. After several rounds of evaluation, 11 experiment region selected. 11 region we call in the east part of China. East part of China is rich, much better. The gap between the rural and the urban is small, but in the western of China, it's bigger. So in the east part of China, 5 region was selected. For example, in Zhejiang province, it selected, we call the Hangjia 实验区, 嘉兴, Huzhou, the 2 cities, maybe 10 county in Zhejiang, and in Fujian, 10 city, 10 county was selected. It's Fuzhou province, Fuzhou city, 就福建这个福州的十几个省，10几个县。And some 广东呢，就是广东 and 这个清远 ，because 广东和清远，maybe about 10 county was selected. And another is 江苏 5 county was selected. 2 county from Nanjing, 1 from Wuxi, 2 from Changzhou, altogether 5 county. And Shandong, it include 济南、淄博和青岛. More than 10 county was selected. This is in the east part of China. 5 experimental region selected. In the middle of China, 2 part was selected. 1 in Henan province, Xuchang is a city, maybe 6 county together. And another is Jiangxi province, Yintan city. Yintan is small, maybe 3 county. In the west of China is huge, but it's much more poor. 1 is in Sichuan province, Chengdu West, Chengdu West is west of Chengdu. Another is Chongqing, west Chongqing. The third is Xi'an and Xianyang together. The east north region is Jilin, Changchun, Jilin-si. More than 10 cities was selected. So this 11 experiment, including more than 100 county. You know, in China, nearly 2,800 county. So it selected 100 county was as the experiment region. So east, middle, west, northeast is balance. In each experiment run, 11-item policy experiment was selected. The 11 items. They try to 11 maybe first is some fair migration system. As I mentioned, nearly 300 million people moved from the countryside to the city. So how to make this person migrant have a better life in the city? So this is the item 1, and altogether 11 items. So what's the result? 2 years later, some evaluation. I'm lucky to invited to participate in this evaluation. We call this evaluation is preliminary evaluation. Preliminary evaluation. So this year, why this evaluation? You know how the local government to have experiment policy. So evaluation can give some case study, some suggestion, and so on. 2 years later, urban-rural income gap have been improved. For example, in this area, this is located in Zhejiang province. So the income gap between the rural and the urban is low. You know, for the national, it's 2.5 to 1. But in this area, much better, 1.5 to 1. So, you know, it's not far from Shanghai. So we get a lot from the Shanghai, the Huzhou and the Jiaxing. It's better. Another is Jiangsu province. Jiangsu province, this area is in Nanjing, is Wuxi and Changzhou. Altogether, five county. This area is become better. Another is Chengdu. Chengdu is huge. This is the experiment run. Experiment. The income gap between the urban and the city and the rural is much low, 1.5 to 1. Rural road and other infrastructure have been better improved. So this policy, why this policy? When you have this experiment road, the local government try to put money to the rural area, so the infrastructure and public service become better. The migrant in the city maybe can improve their rate maybe become better. For example, the children, for the migrant can have school in the city. You know, in China, the household registration, they have this household registration system. So it's not easy for the children in the rural area moved to the city. But in the experiment road, this policy may be cancelled. So the children can move to the city, can attend this primary school, and so on. Investment in rural area have been increased considerably. But its time is so limited. So the strategy is lasted for a long time. The experiment run just 2 years. So there are a lot of problems. For example, the urban-rural income gap have improved slowly, generally speaking, for all the experiment zone, experiment region. The income gap not easy to decrease. The second, there are bigger region disparity. This is a bigger problem in China. Is China so bigger? Some region, for example, Shenzhen and Shanghai, Beijing, maybe the income is high, but in the some countryside in the inner countryside, maybe it's not so easy to increase. So this is the Chinese wisdom to deal with the bigger problem. For example, now for the 乡村振兴示范100千万工程，就 how to make rural revitalization strategy become better. So 2 years ago, the Chinese government tried to initiate a new program we call 100千万工程. What's called 100千万工程? How to say it? Maybe it calls demonstration project. I don't know how to translate. What's the 100千万工程? In 2,840 county, 100 county was selected as a demonstration county. In all country, nearly 40,000 town, 1,000 town was selected as a demonstrated town. In China, nearly 560,000 village, 10,000 village was selected as a demonstrated program. So this is a huge demonstrating project. Why demonstrated project? Maybe it calls benchmarking. This county, this town and village try to do your best to improve the gap between the rural and the city. So another huge project is 乡村建设行动, rural construction action. We call 183 project. Other calls it. In this project, 12 key programs will implemented to try to improve the infrastructure and basic public service and so on, nearly 12 parts. In China, we call this kind of from top to down, from central government to village. Then through the demonstration, maybe from the village to central, 自下而上, 自上而下. Then you can have a very good experience. So as a professor, I get a lot from this kind of, in the top general, top the national strategy, I was invited to participate some discussion for the policy. And later for the evaluation, I have participated. I'm lucky later I got a key major grant from National Social Science Foundation. It's very competitive because I have some experience to participate in this program. So I got this grant. This grant is academic research focused on urban and rural integration in China. It's academic, but I have my team look around and go to a lot of villages and have a very good experience. So that's the university professor can do for the policy. I think there are some policy, how the university can do for the rural revitalization strategy. The first is consultation service, maybe consulting, maybe advisory experience. You know, in different kind of government, there are some committee, a board member from the central government to the local. So some professor was invited to be part of the committee. The second is important meeting advisory, important policy advisory meeting. Sometimes invited some professor. So this is the second. You can give your suggestion, recommendation, and so on. The third is program evaluation. Recent year, third-party program, policy evaluation. So some professor, some university was invited to be the third party can give some evaluation. For example, in the past 5 years, a lot of university and some research unit was invited to evaluate the evaluation, the program. So another is survey. The important program follow-up survey help decision maker know more about the local situation. So I'm lucky several years to give some survey. For example, last year, there in China's very important bureau, we call 国家乡村振兴局, how to say it in English, the Bureau of Rural Revitalisation, maybe. So they have a bigger survey. I'm a team leader, nearly 200 village was and in 20 county. We have a very good survey. Maybe next month, this year, another survey will action. I will go to the 5 county, 50 village to give a very long questionnaire to the village, to the 小农户 household. Another is a case study. So just as 好莱坞，这怎么说？好莱坞对 is the best case study. So in China, it's simple. A lot of research go to the countryside to write some case study. Then this case study maybe it can give a very good example for the other village, other to learn.
Thank you, Professor Zhang. Maybe we can leave some room for the discussion as well. Thank you,
okay.
Professor Zhang, for your speech. Thank you.
Thanks. And nearly end. This is the handbook for the local implementation, and the other is go to the countryside to hammer farmer, and so on, so on. That's all.
Thank you again. Thank you once again. Please remain on the stage. May I invite Professor Wang Yahua, the Associate Dean of School of Public Policy and Management and Assistant President of China Institute of Rural Studies, Tsinghua University, to hold a dialogue with Professor Zheng. Thank you.
Hello, everyone, distinguished guests, speakers, and fellows. Thank you very much for Professor Zheng's very informative presentation. We learned much from your talk. I think in your talk, there's two key parts. One is how to understand the whole picture for Chinese rural revitalization. You see there's many policy design and many pilot projects. Another one I think is your personal policy experience, including research and policy impacts and policy and some policy evaluation. I think this is also very important, so very impressive. So I want to around these two themes and deliver some discussion here to share more knowledge for all of the staffs here. The first question is maybe you can summarize some key lessons or experience from mainland China, how to promote the urban-rural integration, the theme of this forum. I think this is some popular issues in worldwide, and mainland China may have some key experience could be shared today. So please.
Yeah, thanks. So as you know, nearly 20 years ago, our school have set a lot of rural construction center in some countryside 20 years ago. So we try to do something in the village. A lot of students and professors go to the countryside to try to help the farmer. We call this rural construction. So, you know, 4 years ago, in the national, we call the rural construction action becomes the national strategy. So this is so lucky. The university did some local experiment, later becomes a national strategy. So it's a great forward. It's not my own contribution. A lot of professors, especially Wen Tiejun, we are a teamwork. So that's the university can contribute to the national. Where is the national strategy come from? It's not from the sky. It's come from local, especially from the university. So 20 years ago, our school have given a very good experience, lasted nearly 20 years. So the top leader have visited some local village, experimental village. So later, some national strategy was proposed. They can call the 国家乡村建设行动. Maybe it's very good impact for the university.
Okay, thanks for Professor Zheng's response. I think you again emphasize the role of university and professors in policy design to public policy making and implementation. So for me, I think a talk from Professor Zheng is very familiar, but for the guys here, maybe not so familiar because for like in Hong Kong, like in other places of the world, they're more familiar with the community-based approach to promote rural revitalization. But you know, China is huge and centralized public administration, so it's more popular and familiar for Chinese to impact the policy and drive the policymakers have more input, more energy invest to rural areas. So this is very typical. So yesterday, when we discussed about the 8 action plan from our fellows, can you remember? I think one of the impressive things is the majority of the action plan is community-based action. like collaboration, like the environmental education. You see, it's more in community level. But for me, as a Chinese policy researcher, I would like to say, at least in mainland China, the typical way is to design better institutions and give better policy suggestions to the policymakers. If they accept these policy suggestions, that will change the world more quickly. So that's Chinese typical way. So my question to Professor Zheng is, how you perceive the advantages or the disadvantages of this top-down approach, and how to combine bottom-up and top-down approach together in the future in China?
Yeah, it's a totally different Chinese institution from the Western country. You know, in China, from the top to the down, it have a power executive ability. The central government idea can implement it effectively. They have to. Why? There are some evaluation. There are some the promotion system. That's the Chinese characteristic. It's effectively. Sometimes the central government want to know more about the local. You know, they are nearly from 省市县乡村, they merely 5 or 6 level. Some information from the local to the top maybe not correctly transferred. So that need some university help. We can give some special advice to the, in China we call 内参,或者是 how to say it. You can give some advice to the department, to the central government. Then the new policy was issued to try to correct this misunderstanding and so on. So it's totally different system. We try to do our best to serve the local farmer, try to give some information, maybe can diffuse, how to say it, maybe information can share it, maybe good, maybe.
Okay, in terms of the policy implementation in Chinese caricature, you just mentioned the policy experiment. This is another very important because China is huge. You can have some pilot project in different areas. If it is success, you can expand to the whole country. So I think this is some new thing. I don't know whether you have some policy experiment in Hong Kong, maybe very rare, but I think this is very Chinese caricature. So maybe you can share more experience around this stuff. Thank you.
Thank you.
Finally, I would like to say the rural policy is really complex in mainland China. Today, Professor Zheng delivered some basic information, but you do not expect to learn all of the picture of this theme. Maybe I need one course or couple of courses. So I invite if you have interest to have more trip in mainland China, or go to the university like in Renmin, Tsinghua University. We have many courses around this topic. And we look forward to more intellectual exchange with all of you here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Professor Zheng and Professor Wang, for the discussion. Please return to the seat. And our apologies that we had a little bit of technical issues for the LED screen, and luckily we have now already fixed it. So let's move on to the key dialogue. Our third dialogue will be led by Professor Hiroaki Uno on the topic of creating future leaders. Professor Uno specializes in social business and works to develop human resources for regional revitalization in Japan. He has a triple career as an entrepreneur, an advisor to the national policies, and a university professor who runs community development schools in various places in Japan. Let's hear Professor Uno's sharing. Thank you.
Hi everyone. Professor Winnie Low and Professor Tang, thank you for inviting me. I have enjoyed a valuable session so far. During this 1 week stay in Hong Kong, I had the opportunity to go to the site visit to the local community revitalization areas, and I could meet many young generations struggling with social issues. I was so impressed with like highly motivated younger generations who are working many kind of like social issues. I would like to introduce and report everything to Japan and everybody, like, and also the ARI hackathon like participants. Yesterday was a very good presentation. I was enjoying that, and next year I would like to take the Japanese young local entrepreneurs and the graduate students to here. I really want to take many younger generations. Everybody is so interested. I'm like introducing through Facebook. So here, yes. So yeah, I'm a person with 3 titles. An entrepreneur, a national policy advisor, and also a university faculty member. Drawing from these experience and perspectives, I would like to discuss the efforts my projects growing talent for regional revitalization in Japan. The challenge I have faced is one missing perspective. As the title suggests, we must create a thick layer of leaders. I will talk about the pitfalls which everybody faces during community regeneration and the role of the universities in overcoming them. Here are my brief profiles for you. So today I'm going to talk to you about my company and the project in university and the local revitalization university, local revitalization projects. Actually, to be honest, it's 10 years since I made my presentation in English. Yeah, at that time I was in India. And I was working with Indian IT companies to console the local revitalization project. In the end, it was not very good in the end. So I apologize. Today, I'll be speaking with my help of a script. So at first, let me introduce an online used bookstore that I founded 20 years ago when I was a university student. Eco College Company Limited operates an online second-hand bookstore, owning 150,000 books and sells them nationwide through Amazon.com. It ranks 5th in Japan for online specialty used bookstore, and it was founded in Tokyo in 2001 at the age of 20 when I was a university student, and it operated in Tokyo for 5 years. But while I was in Tokyo, I realized a kind of limit in urban areas. Even though I was living in a city and the business environment was so good and many talented people, but I found it difficult to attract attention compared to IT ventures, which raise huge amounts of funding. So as a result, in Tokyo, in huge city, I was feeling a kind of sad, lonely, and stagnant. So I decided to relocate the headquarters, everything to Shimane Prefecture, West Japan, which was my father's hometown. So basically I live in Tokyo, but the company is in here. So Shimane Prefecture is located in the western region of Japan, adjacent to Hiroshima Prefecture. Everyone knows maybe Hiroshima. It's 2 hours car ride from there. And it's a small population with 0.7 million, 700,000 people only of them. And it's facing the challenge of declining birth rate and aging population. The region along the Sea of Japan, north, is less economically fortunate compared to the industrialized area, the south. The Shinkansen, everybody, you know, and high-speed train runs south. In north, there is no high-speed train. My headquarters lies in Okuizumo town in Shimane Prefecture. It's just 12,000 people. And it's my headquarters. In a town that, yes, it really is. It was a ruined factory. And and the inside is like this. So in a town that had lost its bookstore, the sudden location of the bookstore was greeted with joy and surprise. So as a result, Eco College, the company, takes full advantage of the low house rent in the depopulated area. It can operate only 1% of the rent compared to Tokyo. House rent fee was a concern for specialty books because they are so slow selling. But operating in a depopulated area became the strength of the business. So currently it has created employment opportunities of more than 30 people with disabilities. Used books can create various jobs such as like online listings, stock management, shipping. Therefore, it is a business field that is very easy to work on for disability employment. So Eco College has expanded its bases to 4 locations nationwide and is planning to have 1 million books collection by 2030. And it has also raised a cumulative total of $1 million in funding. And I still continue to commute between Tokyo and Shimane every week. It's more than 1,000 kilometers. But it only is 1.5 hours by airplane. So, and that's the only hobby I have. I have no other hobbies. I'm a kind of train spotter, train mania. So I love to take Shinkansen and airplanes. So in promoting regional revitalization, I received great assistance from the Shimane Rehabilitation College, which I later belonged to, has greatly contributed to the expansion of the employment of people with disabilities. So now I speak with my college. So I was invited to join a university due to my accomplishments in employing people with disabilities. To avoid upsetting my boss, let me introduce the school briefly. Otherwise, I can't stay in Hong Kong 1 week. So the Shimane Rehabilitation College is a school that trains physical therapists and occupational therapists, you know, PTOTST, the rehabilitation college, located in the mountainous areas of Okuizumo town. So my company and the university belongs to the same town. It's only 10 minutes back by car ride. So located in the mountainous areas of Shimane Prefecture, so the school actively promotes regional collaboration among healthcare professionals. We have received a grant from Nissei Insurance, which is a major life insurance company in Japan, and launched an innovative health promotion program. The program purchases locally grown produce, vegetables from elderly residents at high prices and serves it lunch at community diners. You know, small scale crops often have little market value and may be discarded and leave people giving up farming altogether. People give up farming. So the project encouraging the elderly people to maintain their fields and continue exercising. So to do exercising, the initiative serves as preventative healthcare. Local residents are also delighted to see the vegetable being put good to use. This is a discarded part of wild boar. It's usually thrown away because it also has no market value. And suddenly local hunters brought us 10 kgs for free. And the students tried to cook it all and they finished it all in 30 minutes and they were so happy. I was also so surprised. Students are very interested in participating in this kind of regional collaboration activities, but they tend to hesitate due to lack of time and money. A great aspect of this project is that students can get a large amount of food. Some students may only come for fun, but it's okay nonetheless. I believe that it is important to win over the students' stomachs as here when they are busy. Medical students have almost 100% of chance of securing employment in hospitals or other medical institutions, but recent trends are now more students in prefer to be involved in promoting healthcare in front of the local revitalization, especially on the front lines. And especially outstanding students prefer to choose to go to the local. So we aim to create new roles for universities in regional revitalization. So now I can finally discuss the main theme of the presentation. So I will talk about my initiatives for fostering human resources nationwide. So these initiatives are undertaken in my role as a national policy advisor and university professor. So my initiative is currently conducting seminars every weekend in various parts of Japan. The seminar entitled Introduction to Regional Revitalization has expanded to 28 locations nationwide. So I'm in somewhere on weekend. So it started in Shimane Prefecture in 2010, and I also now hold a course in Taiwan. I'm going to meet Dr. Tan 2 weeks later. The program runs once a month and continues for about 6 months. It recruits a group of about 10 participants, and they present and share their ideas with each other. When we talk about human resources development, you may imagine some kind of like entrepreneur training programs or ideathon or hackathon program, but it's a bit different. The people who attend these courses are ordinary individuals from somewhere around the area, and they don't even create a business plans. They simply think about minor concerns in their surroundings. And all they do is to try to report, try it out, or what they have tried. That's all. So the course runs approximately 2 to 3 hours each session. Over half of the session is devoted to participants' presentations. The program also features guest lectures from successful local entrepreneurs, but the time is limited, 30 minutes at most. People may be surprised that such a short amount is given to the guest lectures, but it is actually just the right amount. And many ideas and connections are born. And most of the participants are ordinary people who have never even made a business plan. But over the course of 6 months, they grow to the point where they can present a 10-minute presentation. And this easygoing program has produced numerous entrepreneurs and community players, also community producers. So let me introduce an example from Onomichi City, Hiroshima Prefecture. It is relatively an urban area with population of 150,000 people. This place is also a popular tourist destination. But on the other hand, it is also an area with aging communities in remote islands and mountainous areas. So the government is also promoting the revitalization of such areas, but there were no effective solutions so far. So I was asked by the local government to discover and train the next generation of community leaders. And I began to struggle with increasing the number of people who can solve local issues. So I've been holding a 6-month continuous course called Onomichi Regional Development Challenge School for past 9 years. It's already past 9 years. And it already has over 120 graduates, and 80% of the graduates are currently active in the community. It's been found that about 30% of them start their own business within 3 years, and it results in an obvious economic effects. That is more than twice the budget invested by the government. So more and more young people are tackling various local issues from new perspectives, and regional revitalization is progressing, I think. So why do entrepreneurs and social problem solving projects emerge in such a gentle community? So this diagram represents a development model of Japanese professional football league. Once, football was not very popular in Japan, but it has dramatically improved in the past 30 years. The secret to this success lies in an expansion of the base. There was a debate about whether a third-tier league was necessary or not, but it has ultimately raised the overall level of competition. My field of expertise and research team is the field called social business. The importance of social business in regional revitalization is recognized by the government, of course, but it's not being successful as a policy. The reason for this is very simple. Urban way of thinking is eager to be applied to regions with no considered. Entrepreneurial development in urban areas can expect some results by conducting so-called leader development. It's important to provide excellent programs to selected leaders. In other words, as long as the program is good, it's okay. But there are fewer leaders in regions due to population decline, and the competitive environment is also limited. Of course, there are some leaders, but fewer leaders are working hard to protect the safety and security of the region. And they are sometimes being forced to overwork themselves. This could be a trap for leadership development in Japan's local revitalization. There are many good leadership development programs, but sometimes they don't reach the appropriate target audience. Thus, there are many programs which unfortunately end up being wasted. This can lead to the decline of the region, I think. So, to create an excellent social businesses for regions, it's necessary to first create a thick layer of leaders. The potential leader exists for sure. For example, people who work for a company on weekdays and want to start something on weekends. Or people who are approaching or have already retired and have free time and want to start something using their own skills. Many people want to start something by using their own skills and hobbies, but they don't know where to start. I personally call these people weekend heroes. I'm working on discovering these people and training them as the next generation of leaders. This is my effort to build a thick layer of leaders. This is the one of the graduates from the Challenge School. Nice gentleman. He used to be an engineer for a power company. So, and when approaching his retirement, he joined the Challenge School, and now he runs a science education program for local children. His course is incredibly popular nowadays in the city. So this ordinary gentleman has become a hero solving the educational issues in his community. Is he a leader or is he an entrepreneur? Never. I think never. But he's a hero for sure. Oh. So in the introduction courses, the goal is to create connections between 100 ordinary people over a period of 10 years, and the number of graduates increases, the reserve of next generation leaders grows, and the thick layer of leaders is formed. But, and in these 10 years of the initiatives of introduction seminars, the number of graduates has exceeded 2,000 nationwide, and it's been found that excellent social businesses are born from them with certain probability. And also it's okay if things do not go well. As long as it forms a thick reserve of next generation leaders, that is okay. Very kind community is formed and everybody then enjoys it. That's why it became popular in the courses that are now held throughout the country. So, to summarize, my theme focuses on growing talent for regional revitalization. And sometimes a phenomenon occurs where people wonder, there's a fund, but who implements it? It was a kind of the start point when I began the regional revitalization seminar. And while I believe that the government comes up with smart policies, but there may not be enough people to carry them out amidst a declining population. Occasionally, we encounter policies that only secure funding without considering who will actually implement them. By forming a thick layer of weekend heroes, numerous challenges can be undertaken. From these efforts, outstanding next generation social businesses and unprecedented solutions to local issues will emerge. I aspire to create a model like this. Keep finding ordinary people. And yeah, in conclusion, I would like to summarize today's theme of the role of universities in regional revitalization. As you can imagine, the initiative provides a learning environment that is similar to being at university. These courses are also considered as an outreach courses from the university. We can utilize the environment of debate that naturally occurs in universities. Discussions and presentations among university students are considered ordinary while attending university. However, there are few opportunities to engage in such discussions and presentations in the field of regional revitalization. When discussing this, the conversation often shifts to utilizing the resource of universities. Let's utilize the resource of universities, that is okay. But while I think that is important, that is not the main point I want to convey. I believe that what is taken for granted in universities, in other words, the culture should be recognized as valuable and it should be applied to the field of regional revitalization. In universities, there are many opportunities for group discussions and research presentations, but people tend to forget these experiences when they become working professionals. Moreover, there are many who have never attended university in the regions. I believe it is necessary for working professionals or to such people to engage in this type of learning. So I have brought along a few copies of a book I published last year. If you are interested, please let me know. But however, it's in Japanese. So I'll be donating a copy to Hong Kong University and also Dr. Tan. And so if you're interested, please read it. And the sites are also in Japanese, but thanks to AI, you can read it smoothly. And you can contact me by Facebook. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Uno. Please come to the center of the stage. May I also invite our moderator, Professor Ching-Ping Tang, Vice President for International Cooperation and the Director of University Outreach Office from National Chengchi University. Thank you.
Good day. My stomach remind me that we are close to lunch time, so we need to be on time. Basic. Let me remind Solomon some background information for this talk. About 10 years ago, I shared some idea with Danny Lam, Professor Danny Lam, that we should do something. Why? We experienced some kind of village parish in everywhere. All right, especially in Japan, this is the most important place that a lot of villages just disappear. We also want to do something that what we call cultural helix. Means that if we see the higher education development, we will see university, including Hong Kong, I will say that, pay a lot of attention to industry and cooperation with government. If you work with industry, you get donation from industry for your lab, and you produce very talented people working for them, and you get a lot of excellent alumni that can donate money back to the university, and that will be wonderful for the university to develop. The government also do something to help people to earn money, help the industry to promote, like semiconductor in Taiwan, and you earn huge money, and the money never goes back to the rural, right? So that's the place that we universities should reflect. All right, so I have an outreach office, and then we get some very excellent teams here. We experienced very beautiful cases you can show off to the whole world. And then I thought of we call Ono-san.
Yeah, everybody calls me Ono-san.
Yeah, Ono-san was the model that we try to produce. We try to, as a metaphor, we blow students to rural. You know, the most important thing for the rural development is people. So we blow students to rural, and the students can generate some productive ideas and work with local people. And most importantly, we want them to have their careers in the rural place. So they will stay in rural. And once they stay, their sons get there, and their wives get there, and their friends get there. Then the rural will be revitalized soon. So he was the model, and I want him to share the experience here, and of course, a very wonderful experience we can have. All right, so now a test for you, quiz. I got some questions, actually. As the parents of teenagers, not teenagers, college boys and girls, myself, if you want your son to do this, I will be very hesitate because it's kind of bumpy, very bumpy career you might have. All right, so what's the advice that you can have for all these? You know, the fellows here are all these kind of people. What would you give? What advice you will give them?
It's very difficult.
Your own experience, you can share.
Yeah. So it's been 17 years since I go back and forth cities and countryside. Oh, well, what I was feeling was, well, if like I relocated the place to the regions and I could accumulate like great experiences. So for example, if I had continued to stay in Tokyo, then I would never be able to meet such kind of like prestigious people, local mayors, or like big company like establishment people, or other people. I could never meet them. So in the countryside, there are fewer younger generations. So like, at that time I was 24, 25. So, you 24, 25 and you have your own company and you come from Tokyo and you go back and forth to Tokyo and Shimane every week. And you're interesting. And everybody invited me to many places and treated me. That was a very good point. Please.
Yeah, you finish. You finish?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, right. So you mean we should stay in the city then travel as a travelholics? All right. Yeah, my second question is...
Sorry, what was your first question?
So advice to the kids, to the youngsters.
Sorry. Yeah. I was so nervous in the presentations. Now everything's away.
Okay, continue.
Okay.
Time is short.
Yeah. Yeah. For all participants, I was not the guy who was very good at presentations and discussions. So, and now I'm like this. So everybody was like doing very good presentations. You be a very good leader for the future. I hope so. And as for your question, well, I always take my daughter to regions, every time, and she likes to join me to come to the regions, because she is like me to love to take the high-speed train. And she's like looking at my like workshops, doing it everywhere on weekends. Sometimes she she is now in elementary school, so she can't do for such frequently. But when she was in kindergarten, she was like
too young.
Yeah, too young. And she was my secretary. And she's very proud of my work, and she's very interested in the rural country.
If she get into this business, she might suffer from no income for 2 years. So how would you do?
Yes, the income is very low, I think, relatively low. So like if you stay in the cities, maybe you can make high salaries, or you can like work in big companies and salary is very high. But in rural countries, the salary is relatively low and the income is not guaranteed. So the important thing is that which do you emphasize on it. So like if you want to chase economical like incomes, then you can choose like working in the cities. But in the countryside, there are like more valuable things. I feel so.
All right, great. So we need to continue. Same question is that since we know the university has been the reservoir for the talents, for the leaders you mentioned, what will you advise, since I has been the vice president, so I can influence the policy. So if you want to talk to me, what advice you will give?
Yeah. So the momentum growing for regional revitalization. So there are many universities putting more effort onto regional revitalizations. So many universities recently began to assign managers responsible for regional revitalization. And the numbers are increasing, but it's very hard to find good people, good managers, because the competition for research position is severe in any countries, in Japan too. So people who aspire to research at prestigious central universities for the future often end up being hired in such managers or local universities. For example, like I need to be I need to get research positions, but there are no positions in the central. So where the hell is Shimane Prefecture? I don't want to go, but I need to go to get the research positions. That kind of situation always happens, and these kind of people often disappear within a few years without accomplishing anything. Am I a management manager for rural revitalization? I don't know. I don't care. I stay in the laboratory and no community engagement. So, but instead of that, recent years, there is an increasing trend of young social entrepreneurs in rural areas being hired as these kind of managers responsible for regional revitalization. Some of them have transferred their previous jobs, and others, like me, juggle the role along with running a company. So it's like me. So these individuals have extensive experience and networks, and they have deep trust from the local community, and also the skills of guiding students are so highly developed. And also it will be a great advertisement for local universities.
We are national universities, not local.
No.
All right. Final question. We are told to finish soon. Any idea we can take a ride on the tide of CSR, corporate social responsibility? We got a lot of money, a lot in private sector. So when we try to do our business, how do we utilize that? Hard, huh? Okay, you can skip this if you don't want.
Yeah, I do many local initiative projects, and I'm always asked to
what?
Give an idea to everybody. I'm always like this. Well, I have no idea.
Now?
What do you think? That always happens. I'm not a person with ideas. But
okay.
that is very important.
It means that you have idea, then money will come. Is that so?
Well, ideas are not very important. I believe what local residents or what local people want to do. It's important.
Okay.
So do what they
What if
want
they don't know what to do?
What
Most
if
of the time they don't know what to do.
that is important. So what do you want to do? I don't know. What? Yeah, what I should be? I have no idea. So what do you think? What do you think? What do you think? That's what I always do in the local introduction seminars.
Right.
And people will be imagine some kind of ideas in the future. That is the most important thing to do local revitalization.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Uno and Professor Tang. Please return to your seat. I'm sure some of you have questions for our speakers. So coming up, we will have a panel discussion led by Professor Wai-Fong Lam, the Director of Center for Civil Society and Governance, Head of Department of Politics and Public Administrations of HKU. May I together also invite Dr. King, Professor Zheng, and Professor Uno to come onto the stage.
All right. Is it free seating? No, I need to sit at the end. Please. One more. Okay, it's you. Okay. All right. Thank you. Yeah. Now, finally, we come to the final session. I understand that actually we are 25 minutes from lunch, so we need to make a good use of time. And well, actually, I think the the talks actually address the issue of rural revitalization from very different angles. And Peter talks about all the issues and challenges involved in mitigating climate on agriculture and mitigating agriculture on climate, and a lot of things, from technology, supply chain, to people's behavior. And then Professor Zhang talks about the macro sort of policy making infrastructure in China, which we can tell the complexity, of course. And then Ono-san talks about some very delicate issues involving incubating leaders, right? And then you talk about a layer of leaders, right? So I guess, I want this panel discussion actually really to focus on the theme of today, that, what is the roles of the university in the process of rural revitalization? And also, actually, I want to engage the members of the audience, actually, online and offline, actually, in the discussion. But before I open up the floor, which I will, welcome questions, let me throw some questions first, just for some warm-up discussion, right? Professor Chang, actually, when you make the presentation, I had a lot of questions for you in mind, but then Professor Wang asked most of them. So, and then maybe I ask you one question, because one thing that struck me, in the presentation is that you got a huge grant from the National Science Foundation or something, that allow you to do a lot of research, policy advice, and then influence the policy making at the very top level, right? So, but that actually relates to a very important question of, where are we getting resources, for this, for the university actually play a greater role in the process, because, in Hong Kong, humble professors actually do not really have the privilege of having some huge grant. And actually, I think Professor Tang also talks about, where we're going to get the resources actually, for this, for the university to do the work, So any tips, that you can give us?
So I think maybe my experience, the close cooperation for a long time, that you can get a better competitive dynamic. So it's not easy. But we try to do a lot of job. But for a lot of China's department grant is competitive. All the people can come here. Yeah. Then maybe the last you can get the grant. It's not easy. So it's based on the long relationship. You can do a lot of work. For example, the last year I get the grant, but not a good evaluation. The next year you out. So we try to do our best to make the grant better result.
But I would like to echo Professor Tang's question about the ESG, because the corporate actually is increasingly interested actually in the sustainability issues. I'm just wondering, what's your take actually in the prospect of getting more corporate support in this in the university's work for this revitalization process?
Yeah, I'm lucky that in recent years that the grant in China increased very quickly from different parts. Some from the National Social Science Foundation, some from the government. A lot of government have some very detailed grant, but you have a cooperation with them for a long time. Then you can get this chance to participate. But for the National Social Science Foundation, all people can apply this process. So recently, we are lucky the grant, the government grant increased very quickly recent years. This is the reason. For China, the research is very important for the policy. Yeah. So they put on, for example, maybe every year there are some how to say it, 征求意见. If you have some new idea, you can give some proposal, pre-proposal to the foundation. Maybe finally, your idea appeared in the directory. How to say it? 就是你可以征求意见，然后最后你的如果被采纳的时候，你就可以在那个申请目录，大家都可以来申请。但是你能不能拿到，就看你幸运了，就看你的，这个是吧？他因为我也经常参加这个评审，这个评审的也是竞争很激烈，有时候10比1，就是竞争很激烈。但是我们很幸运的是，就是这个城乡融合这个项目拿到了。当然，所以你申请就是你过去的经验，你过去的发表，你过去的这些成果，其实是一个非常好的基础，是这样。所以有时候英文就不够了，然后就是直接用中文表达的。I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you. Okay, all right. So maybe Peter, in your presentation, you actually talked about lots of issues, right? But then at the end of the presentation, you talk about one of the major roles of the university actually is to train the climate smart farmers, right? So I agree that actually we need to recognize that farmers are smart, right? But climate smart, would involve a lot of engagement, persuasion. That is a big challenge, right? From our experience, what is your experience there?
Yeah, one of the things I would say is it's really important for university professors to get out of the classroom and into the field more often, and to actually get down and be involved in things like demonstration plots and climate smart field schools, dealing directly with the rural communities. And not just sitting in the classroom and talking to students, but actually getting out in the field and getting the kind of two-way experience. It's really important that you actually learn from the farmers themselves, and then you try to bring that into a more systematic framework that you can then pass on to students. So I think it's really important to be grounded in the kind of not only research, but also sort of directly working with local communities.
No, I agree that engagement is very important, but for some reasons, actually, I think not many professors are very good at engaging the community, right? So, for different reasons, incentives reasons, or whatever, So, any advice, because, it's easier said than done that, okay, you guys should go out, go out of your office to engage, whatever. But then, colleagues actually in this room, in the academia would know that, wow, well, what are you talking about? I need to write papers, I need to, apply funding, everything. So, any advice?
Yeah, I think that the incentives are all wrong for professors. It's publish or perish, and the number of students that you have in your class. So the incentives are all wrong. So to the administrators in the university, and I don't know if we have any in the room, think very much about the set of incentives for your professors to actually get out and get some more field experience. One of the most important lessons I learned in my career is that I went to China in 1976, and I visited, I think, about a dozen communes at that time. Every one of those communes had a plan for the future. Not one of them realized that within 15 years there would be no communes. Yes, and so that taught me that change can happen very, very quickly, and China is a great example of tremendous change over a 50-year period, and so getting out into the field and understanding the real problems and the real opportunities, I think is the only way for universities to really contribute to rural revitalization.
Are we recording? So make sure that you know what you said is recorded and we show to our university management. Okay, wonderful. Ono-san, you talk about incubation of leaders, right?
Yeah,
but then you use the term layer of leaders, right? Layer means that, you know, it is a thick sort of thing, right? And then you talk about culture and everything, right? But in your presentation, you talk about, you know, you giving classes, seminars, and then you talk about weekend heroes, right? So I'm just wondering, you know, what are the mechanisms that we can really scale up this, you know, individual weekend heroes and students into a layer of leaders? I think this is, you know, very important. So what is the mechanisms?
Well, I talked about the system, like way of leadership development differs from the urban and regions. So in urban areas, the competitive environment is necessary in a sense, but in regional areas, the leader itself is, the number of leaders are very few. So we need to think from there, I think. So, what was the question? So sorry.
No, I'm just asking about the scaling up. You know, because you show us the map of Japan and then with many dots, and then you told us that actually those dots are the places where you give seminars and things like that. Wow, I thought that wow, you like travel a lot, I'm sure, and you work very hard. But I'm just thinking about, you know, how you connect those dots into lines and connect the lines into a plane. You know, I think that's important. That's what you're talking about when you talk about the layer, right? So I'm just thinking about what are the mechanisms that.
Well, I have seen so many great social entrepreneurs from that kind of seminars, which like change the system of the society, or which like produces more than 100 people of development. But I have no idea who will be the extraordinary entrepreneur. I really don't know. So the numbers are important. So as I mentioned, that some in some percentages, the extraordinary entrepreneurs will be produced from the system, but I don't know exactly who will be. So like in the seminar, like there is mom growing kids and like used to be like working in a bank or a big company and retired for a while to grow children, but she has very high skills, but she don't know what to do or how to do it from herself. Those kind of like people are like everywhere. So we need to find ordinary people.
All right, very good. Okay, all right. So we have only 10 minutes left. So I'm going to open up the floor and see whether we have questions from members of the audience. I'm sure there are many, right? But you guys are just shy. Yes.
Actually, mine is more of maybe an observation first, and then maybe a question. So most of you probably studied, Western countries, and you mentioned the Ostrom connection. To this day, whenever I read textbooks, these are mostly success stories about the West, even about rural revitalization. The texture, the settings of those stories, Europe, United States, etc., basically. So I think this was very important to me to kind of read and go to villages and understand success stories from the East. unless we have our own kind of set of success stories, it's a little foreign. So thank you for that. And I hope collectively HKU or AIT can build that textbook of Eastern success stories. So that's kind of, Dr. Lam, this is for you to do that basically. To Dr. King, always great listening to you. Maybe a question for Dr. Ono, who came across as, doubting himself sometimes, but because of that, being very honest. This stuff is not easy. What you're trying to do is not easy. And the classic idea of the entrepreneur, the Bill Gates or whoever, basically, there are so many who never reach that level of entrepreneurship, right? But there are so many more who have ideas. There's so many in this room, kids like Alice right here, David's here somewhere. So I like your idea of creating, volumes, numbers of, like a tech layer of entrepreneurs. You never know. Instead of competition, maybe the collaborative effort is the way forward, right? Like not compete against each other, but maybe collaborate to have a real huge triangle of success, basically. So, Dr. Ono, thank you for opening our eyes to the possibility.
You need to come to your question.
Yeah, the weekend hero concept, not a full-time entrepreneur. How do you enable that? Yeah, that's a question for you.
Yeah. So, well, I think it's also fine if things do not work as planned. So, yeah, so many entrepreneurship development programs also in Japan. But what I saw in such programs was those who established a company, those who succeeded was the winner, and others are loser, go somewhere, goodbye. I really hated that. That was the beginning of the introduction seminar. So it's okay if things go well or not. And as long as it forms a thick, community, that will be fine. And Japan is a country with many disasters. So the kind of community is very strong when disaster happens. So people can help with each other in many cases. So I try to focus on who will win. Not who will win, but what can the rest of the people can do. That was a way of thinking of mine. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Other questions? Yes.
Thank you, professors. I want to ask one question for Anna-san. You just talked about, Professor Tang asked you why some young people go to the countryside to work. Because the salary is very low, and you just talked, you find some other values in the countryside. I think in Lecture War also meet this kind of problem. Why young people go back to the countryside? So can you share what kind of some other values you found in villages? Yeah, thank you.
So what is it? Oh yeah. So I really had a chance to visit Leichi Wo, and it was so nice community, which was inaccessible from the city center. You need to take a ship to visit there. But there are many young generations working to solve the community issues. And they were so highly motivated. I was so delighted to see their projects. And well, the values, regions should be the system where young, talented, yet financially struggling can accumulate various experiences. I was like that. I was so poor, but I visited, I was go back and forth 1,000 kilometers away to the West regions. But when I go to the community, I could like get lots amount of food. I can travel a lot, and yes, so many things. But other values, it's very difficult to explain. But the community should be a system where no one can lose. Nobody is left behind. That is another like good aspect of the regions.
Good try. Actually, you know, what is the experience in China? Because I think China is also facing a challenge of how to, you know, attract people actually coming back to the village.
Yeah, the recent year, our graduate student go to the countryside.
Yeah.
They try to become the new farmer. We call the new farmer. The focus is on the economic value of the product. No fertilizer, no pesticide, and for the middle income in the city, we like this kind of agricultural product. But the traditional farmer maybe put a lot of fertilizer and pesticide. So the price of this kind of new product, agri product, here maybe double times. So a doctor degree, our student, two students go to the countryside to become the new farmer. So you have to give some value added product. Maybe that's very important.
Peter, what's your take?
Yeah, if I could just add, I think the key point is that if you have a passion for whatever it is, follow your passion. Don't follow the money. The money will follow. If you have a passion, follow the passion, and you'll have a successful life. And you know, the trap that young people fall into is, I have to get a high-paying job to start with, and I need my Mercedes-Benz, and don't go down that path. Just follow your passion.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. All right, so I guess time is up, right? So we need to conclude this session, and thank you very much, everyone, you know, for very interesting talks and the sharing. Thank you. All right, so thank you.
Thank you all. May I invite you all to stand up and take a photo together? Thank you, thank you. Professor Lam, please remain on the stage.
No, I need to say a few words actually to wrap up today so that you guys can go for lunch, okay? So I'll be quick. Now again, you know, actually I think, I think the major idea is that every city actually needs a rural area, which actually provide lots of ecological services, you know, embody cultural heritage and everything. And then the challenge, of course, is how are we going to actually protect and preserve the rural areas. And I still remember yesterday when I talked to Professor Wang, and he just told me that, wow, the situation in Hong Kong is so different from China. It's a different scale, of course. China is everything we're talking about, huge number. In Hong Kong, we have one dot, basically, right? It's small dots, actually. So he was saying that, well, actually, we need to pay attention to the complexity and diversity of different contexts, which I think is a very interesting idea, right? But then I guess, one commonality sharing all the experiences actually in this region is that, rural revitalization is a very complex process that requires collaboration. And I hope that, this kind of collaboration could be fostered through activities like this, that, the fact that, the AIRI program actually is a very good. We hope that, the major idea is that, okay, we cannot solve all the problems all by themselves. Instead, we need to form, consortium, groups, networks actually to kind of solicit help from different people with different knowledge, different ideas, and different backgrounds. And in the past few weeks, actually, our fellows actually have been engaging with one another to come up with some very interesting ideas. And of course, this is not the final stop, right? There's still a way to go. And I hope that, this week's hackathon and also today's forum actually could really do a small part actually contributing to fostering the collaboration that we need, for rural revitalization, right? So are there anything? Okay, finally, I need to thank my many partners, right? Of course, our funder, HSBC, thank you very much. The government, of course, Professor Tang, Mr. Wong, well, actually, Mr. Wong actually has been very supportive of the rural revitalization, of course, colleagues from the government, and also the, so many, Tsinghua University, Chengchi University, Asian Institute of Technology, and also our speakers, Professor Zhang, Uno-san, and Peter, of course. Yeah, thank you very much. And okay, I think that concludes the session, and let's go get lunch. Okay, thank you.
Before we go to lunch,
okay.
May I invite Professor Lam to return to your seat, and our photographer will take a group photo together.
One more, 1, 2, 3. Let's have a look first. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Last but not least, your opinions means a great deal to us. So on the screen, we would like to invite you all to do a survey for us and let us know about your thoughts on today's forum. Also, we have a few QR codes about our center and ongoing projects. Please do visit our website and stay in touch. Thank you, everyone.